Greetings and welcome to The Thirsty Mage, the podcast still reeling from experiencing one of the truly great RPGs. I'm your host, David Lloyd, and this week we attempt to have a spoiler cast on a game that could be analyzed for years with the amount of content that's just bursting from every seam. And in an hour, we're going to try to get in as much Octopath Traveler II talk as we can. So we had the episode earlier with impressions and basically talking as much as we could without giving away much of the story, which was both easy and difficult at the same time. But this week, all bets are off. All stories will be discussed, and we're going to have a fun time doing it. So with me this week, still peeling his jaw up off the floor after an amazing playthrough, it's Jordan Rudick.
I think it speaks volumes, the fact that we're recording the spoiler cast, 2 or 3 weeks after the Impressions episode, right? And I think that's just how difficult it was for us to not play this game. We were both just, immediately and intensely hooked on it, as I knew I would be, as you maybe were surprised to find yourself in that position. But yeah, definitely an excellent RPG. Starting off the year super strong. It's going to be a great year for RPGs. It seems like I'm really happy that we're getting a chance to talk about this one again, because after going through it, finally wrapping up the epilogue and the final credits and everything yesterday. It definitely hit all the high notes, and I'm eager to get into it once again.
Yeah, I was pretty sure that I had pissed away $90 on a game I was probably going to play for 5 hours and bounce off of. So it was a pleasant surprise to find out how great it was and how much of a different experience it was for me from the first one. Yeah, I guess at some point I'll probably replay the first one just to see if something was going on back then. But I'm fairly confident they've made enough changes to this game that I don't think my opinion will change too much on the first one. But yeah, it was an amazing. I guess it was most of March, like almost the entirety of my March was just hours and hours and hours into Octopath. So,
and I found it just particularly difficult to even just play other games. This is just kind of my MO. When I get into one game, I don't like to have a lot of side games, and I have kind of been picking up periodically a bunch of smaller review games. I posted a couple recently, and I'm working on a bunch more, and it's just been so hard to kind of deviate from this Octopath and play those smaller games, because just every time, when the kids go to bed, I've got that free time at night. I haven't wanted to play something smaller. I've wanted to get into this. So I'm also happy that it's finished, so that now I can get back to doing some more writing and playing a little bit more varied content on my Switch and elsewhere. But this one, after 50 plus hours, I've had my fill. I've really enjoyed it. I do still have one final kind of secret side quest or secret boss to take down. I'm probably going to come back to that later. I did want to plat the game, and that's going to keep me from doing it right now. So, maybe in the fall, when I've got a little bit more free time, and I'm not teaching in the fall, it'll be something that I return to. I come back, do that grinding that I need to do to take on the secret boss. Fantastic experience all the way through. Really loved the characters, loved the world. There is so much to enjoy about this game, and I think the feeling or the impression that keeps coming back to me is just how moment to moment, how what you are seeing on screen is just immaculate. This is the pinnacle of the 2D HD RPG genre or subgenre that's emerged here. We haven't seen any, we see them continuously improving on this technology that they have. And I'm just eager. I expect Dragon Quest III HD to look even better than this. I think this game looks incredible, and I think they're just going to keep getting better at this fledgling technology. So I'm eager to see more, and I'm eager to talk more about this game too.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get into too much of sequels and stuff, but I'm hoping that Octopath 2 did well enough that they are going to do a third. And if it didn't do well enough, that they at least don't abandon the incredible combat system. Yeah, because it deserves to live on in some form. And it's funny, you talked about the 2D HD. Now we got Live Alive coming out on the other platforms. It looks like
that's right.
Nintendo's purchase of exclusivity ends in April, so I'm looking forward to picking that up. But
And it did
Yeah.
pretty well just on the one console. I think it sold over 500,000 units, which is pretty good for a smaller. It's not a AAA title or anything like that. It was more of a budget game. I don't think it released at full retail price, and neither is it doing so with the release on other platforms too. So yeah, hopefully that'll give the game a boost. I didn't love it. I know a lot of other people did. I'll be curious. I think you're going to pick it up on Steam, I imagine, right?
Yeah, a
Yeah.
plan. Well, yeah. Well, it's actually I was actually considering I've got a $50 credit on my PlayStation,
There you
so I
go.
might actually
That'll
pick it
just
up
about
on
cover it.
PS5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, I'm live. Obviously, like they are, seeing people get into these HD 2D games, these classic RPGs, and I'm glad that there are teams still working on these smaller games or bringing games from the past and kind of reproducing them for a modern audience. It's great. I don't know that we're going to get an Octopath Traveler 3. As much as I would love it, I'd also love to see this team kind of take this combat system, this style of game, and maybe try doing like the larger kind of connected story. Like, yes, there are connections in this game, but it is definitely atypical, right? It does still feel like a collection of short stories with some threads linking them. I'd love to see what they could do with just a large world where it is a more really traditional kind of game with a big story that kind of builds and party members that you kind of acquire as you go. I'm just curious that, now that they've been able to do this style, a couple times and had some success with it. Like what else can they do now? Like let give the team within this HD 2D kind of traditional turn-based combat system, like maybe let them try something new there too. But yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see.
Tri-path strategy,
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's got to have, obviously it has to have a number in it, right? 4, 3, some kind of prefix that
Yeah.
tells us a number. Unless it's mono, right? You do
Quadrupath.
mono, you do one. It's mono story traveler. I don't know, like
Yeah.
something like that. No, we're just gonna have one. We're gonna have one story this time, and it's gonna be it.
Well, if Team
Yeah.
Asano is the one that makes it the game, whatever they make next, the one thing you can guarantee is that Team Asano is going to name it something so ridiculously simple that it
Yeah.
seems stupid.
Obviously, I know you're not there yet, but at the very end of the game, either before or after the credits roll, Octopath Traveler, like the words come up on screen, and it almost got a chuckle out of me. Like it's just beating you over the head with
With
it's
that same
absurd
font too,
title,
the
same
Times
font, same
Times
title.
New Roman.
Yeah, and I
font,
still underlined, the big characters.
Yeah.
It was just funny to see it again, like. And I don't know. Is that them saying like, oh, it's done now? Like they're not going to do anymore? I don't know. We do see a lot of games not just get a sequel, but get a third one. So I wouldn't be surprised to see another one. But whatever these developers do, I'm going to be here for. Like this side of Square Enix, this branch of the company that is kind of dedicated to traditional classic turn-based RPGs. Yeah, I'm going to pick up all of them. I've loved everything they've done so far. The Bravely games, the Octopath games, Triangle Strategy, all so incredible. So, man, if some of those people are working on Dragon Quest 3 HD, we are in for a treat. Like, I can't wait for that game.
No, exactly. But yeah, I guess we're gonna try to keep this within an hour, so we'll jump right into Octopath, and I guess we should start with the writing because it's a great game. It's with 8 different stories. It's funny. I tried to avoid as much spoilers as I could, so I was avoiding reviews. But when you're on Twitter, you always catch stuff, and it's funny seeing like initially there was a lot of. I don't know if it kind of playing down the like, yeah, there's connections, but they're not that much stronger. And then now that I've kind of gotten through the entire game, I'm kind of questioning this idea that the connections aren't stronger in this game than they were before. Like, uh, leading up to, so the it's this game uses the same structure as the first, where you have kind of chapters for each character. Each character actually has like a different number of chapters depending on who it is. Like I know like Oshed had the shortest with 3 chapters, but technically like chapter 2 is like A, B, and C. So
Yeah, 3 parts to the second chapter. That's right. Yeah.
everybody's story was more or less like same lengthwise, but I could just see the connections between each one as we're going. Like you can see like the villains in one, like, you're starting to see like, oh, I bet you they're connected to the villains over in this other story, and then to see it all kind of, by the end of the chapters it still wasn't all quite there, but then in the finale, when the darkness comes and you start reading, getting into the different, where they're starting to lay it out, where it's like, okay, here's the overall story. It kind of blew me away because I was just like, wow, like I wasn't expecting. I was kind of expecting the heel turns from a couple of them.
Hmm.
Maybe not the Scrivener. uh,
Yeah.
I don't think I was expecting that, but I was kind of like, oh, when they showed us that V-Day thing, it's funny. Temenos was one of my first stories, and when he was doing that puppet show for the kids
Hmm.
about the gods and stuff, I'm like, this seems like it's going to be important by the end of the game.
Yeah, and I think that the first game plays with that concept as well, like the gods, and there being maybe like an outcast or someone discontent with them that wants to disrupt this natural order, or this order that is taking place in the world. So I guess I was kind of expecting that a little bit from this game, just because the world seemed very similar, the lore seemed very similar, the Flame Keeper and the church that Temenos belongs to, like that had carried forward from the first game too, I believe. So I was kind of expecting not so many of the heel turns that we end up seeing in the final chapter with all the characters together, but just this idea that there's going to be someone kind of trying to resist I guess what historically has been the gods and people following them, and we don't like this, we want to go against that, we want to shake things up, I guess. So yeah, I mean, gosh, I liked all the characters so much. I wanted to mention the writing. I think the writing of the characters is just fantastic. It's so hard not to just fall in love with each one of them. Even if you don't love their class or their the abilities or skills that they pick up, I think that you still can feel for, or kind of sense a kinship. You want to kind of bond with each of these characters because they're all very relatable and likable. There's always going to be some moment in one of their chapters where you're like, you're just kind of impressed, or you're connected to them somehow. And the stories, the individual stories in each chapter, they're so dark, they're so kind of real and visceral. Like there's so much death and love and regret and all, just so many strong feelings coming out of all of them. And it really does run the gamut, from Throne and betrayal to Partitio and his kind of struggling with, I guess kind of picking himself up off the dirt and kind of starting from nothing, to Agnea and her kind of hopeful, and her sharing, kind of meeting friends and kind of sharing her experiences and just kind of trying to be the best that she can. You really do get everything out of these characters. And I think that's what really helps the story kind of coalesce, is that every character is kind of representing different, parts of the human experience. And so you get so much out of them. And by the end, yeah, just every story kind of feels like reaches a satisfying conclusion, that you don't really need there to be necessarily this larger one. There is kind of a larger one that happens, but each one, as it wraps up, you're like, oh, like this character's journey kind of has reached a satisfying point. And
Yeah.
sure, I want to see more, but I want to see more because I love them, not because I need to from a narrative standpoint.
Oh, exactly. And it's funny too because a lot of the stories feel familiar. Like I joked that a lot of the stories seem to be like famous movies that they've
Mm,
kind of played around with a bit. Like Oswald really reminds me of like the Count of Monte Cristo,
sure.
where it's like best friend, ends up taking everything, and he's out for revenge, but
Oh, totally. Yeah.
then he finds out that he has his family's not really gone, so then his it kind of the thirst for revenge disappears, and that
I mean,
going
that was
forward.
incredibly dark, though, right? What
Yeah,
takes place in his final chapter, where like his it turns out that his wife was like abducted rather than killed and turned into this shadow beast that you end up having to
yeah,
defeat, and that his daughter is still alive and brainwashed. I mean, those were incredible, like twists in that story that I totally did not see coming. I thought, yeah, just it's kind of, I guess, on the way or on the path to being like just a typical revenge story. Like he's gonna find Harvey, and there's gonna be this epic battle between them. There is an epic battle between them, but not
Yeah.
before these realizations that he has more to fight for,
Yeah.
right? And the idea that it's his daughter still alive, and he can feel love again, and that's what kind of allows him to power up and, I guess, understand that one true magic that he'd been looking for his whole life. I don't know, a little bit cliche, of course, but also just very fun and enjoyable to exciting to get to all those story beats.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like they take a lot of cliches, but then kind of turn them around a bit. Like, I guess the other thing is like Hikari's felt like Maximus from Gladiator, like
Mm,
the Russell Crowe movie. There, like the idea of he was supposed to be the leader of this group of people decides that the person who's really in line is kind of a jerk, and
yeah,
they have a change of heart and would rather someone like bring peace to the land, and so that was supposed to be Hikari, but then the bad guy finds out and disposes the leader before they can actually set it in motion and cast out Hikari, and so it all kind of coalesced that way. But then it's the trick here is that he has this friend in Kazan that's helping, is so instrumental in him
mm,
get gaining back the or get taking his rightful place, and but then Hikari never really feeling like he earned it to a certain degree, like
yeah.
almost. So there's all these just little tweaks to the stories which were really good. I was going to ask too, is like, would Harvey be the most villainous villain in this game to you? Like, I think Harvey stood out as, to me anyway, as maybe the most like like the biggest presence, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because he has more screen time than someone like Mugen, Hikari's, I guess, stepbrother or half brother or something like that,
Yeah.
who ends up being the overtaking the kingdom of Ku, and seizing the throne, killing his father, all that stuff. Like Mugen is, I think he's a little more ruthless just because of all the people he kills for the pursuit of his goal of just like being the dominant power, and making sure that everyone is subjugated. Like, I think he inflicts the most harm on people. If you remember, he sets this whole city on fire just to like kind of punish people, or just kind of show that this is, it's a new regime, or it's a new way of doing things. He
Yeah.
has this ability, he's just going to do it. Like, everyone else be damned, literally. Like, he's going to just exercise his power in that way. So I think Mugen to me stood out as like, you don't see him as much, he's not on screen as much, because of Hikari's story is about collecting all these different people to join his cause. But I think, just if we think of it kind of his character alone, all the things that he's done kind of behind the scenes, I do think he's the most evil. Harvey's the most like in your face, like you want to hate him the most, because yeah,
He was
but
very Kafka-ish to me almost.
totally, yeah.
Yeah.
He very much was, and doing whatever it takes, to achieve his own goal, but which is a very individual one, right? Just kind of learning this one true magic power for himself, right? It's funny that he and Harvey and Oswald kind of both have that same goal, but they just go at it in completely different ways, right? Where
Yeah.
Oswald's kind of doing it from a mathematics point of view, and logic, and trying to think it through, whereas Harvey's kind of the, I'll stop at nothing, I'll sacrifice everybody to make that happen. So yeah, I love, obviously, Oswald was my starting character, so you have a little bit more of an interest in completing his storyline, and yeah, Harvey was absolutely one of those villains you love to hate. But yeah, for me, like, Hikari's story almost felt like the main story of the game, just because of like the way he's like going around the world to recruit different people, almost kind of like an analogy for what you're doing in the game, literally. Like, you
Yeah.
go around to different cities to recruit people onto your Octopath Traveler team. Hikari's kind of doing the same thing, right? Building up this party to take over, retake Ku in its rightful spot. Whereas in the game, you're recruiting all those people just to get through the whole story, get through the game. So that the way that it kind of, Hikari's story kind of lined up with the story of the game, to me, like, that made me feel like, oh, like, every time I'm doing a Hikari chapter, I'm kind of getting ready to savor it because I know something kind of major is going to happen here. Like, who is he going to recruit now? Who's going to, join the band? Or who are we going to take back to Ku to really take the fight to Mugen? But and I felt like just because his Hikari's chapter, unlike the other ones, was building up to a war, right? You're recruiting armies for a war. It just felt like there's this bigger scale to it. And even though the final chapter goes a little bit quickly through it all, I understand that. But to me, that one really, Hikari's story really stood out for me. Just the scope of it all, and the fact that Mugen had just been such a tyrant, compared to on a larger scale. Like, I felt like taking him down was going to have the biggest impact on the world of the game.
Yeah, well, and it's funny too. I felt the same way. I felt like Hikari's was kind of the center point, or the leading. And I actually ended up leaving that to the end.
Yeah,
like that was the last chapter, because I'm like, this seems like it should be the conclusion, so I'm going to go with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was most upset initially because they do redeem themselves, but I was most upset at Throne's conclusion, because I was like, well, who the hell is this guy? And then they pulled Rise of Skywalker, where he's like, for reasons I'm an immortal. And I'm like, well, what do you mean for reasons? And then we kill him and it's over. And I'm like, no, like, you can't just introduce this guy out of nowhere and then be like, for reasons I'm immortal, and then decide that you're not going to tell the story. So thankfully, I'm glad that we've actually found out what was going on with Claude, because he was like the most perverse, I guess, to a certain degree, with this fact that, like, so you end up finding out he's the Archmage Darkest. I knew that there was going to be a connection with this guy, because he kept hearing his name all the time, and I'm like, he's going to be the thorough line for most of these people. But to find out that Claude was one of the what do you call it, offspring, or he was like in the bloodline of Darkest, so he was immortal for that reason, but then wanted to die, so he kept having babies with countless people until one of those children finally ended up killing it. A very Kill Bill
for
storyline, I guess.
I could see that.
And then the whole final boss fight, he's holding a baby the entire fight.
Yeah, that was weird. It was almost like, why am I attacking this person? Like, I don't want the kid to get hurt, right? Like, it was fitting for him, right? Because he didn't really care about any of his children. He just wanted one of them to rise up, right? But right before that, if you talk to the mother is on the street, leading up to that fight, and she literally says, "Please kill my baby," and I remember
the party's like, "What the hell was that?"
Yeah.
And then you see the baby there, and you're like, "Oh, okay, I get it."
I think I liked more of Throne's earlier chapters than her later ones. I thought that the fights against a father and mother were quite good. Especially the one against mother, where there's that girl that's kind of like trying to impress mother, right? And she's kind of being punished. You fight basically on like a rooftop kind of setting, or like the edge of a house or something. And the girl's like tied to a bell and gets kind of being whipped or punished by mother. And so you take out mother, and then afterwards, this girl, I don't remember her name. It might have like Lara or Mora or something like that.
Yeah, like Marlene or something.
Marlene, yes, something like that. And so, and she gets upset with you after. She's like, why did you do that? Why did you kill her? Right. And there's that opportunity Throne has after mother is defeated, like, to not kill her, just defeat her and like leave her. But of course, Throne's like, no, I'm gonna take her. I'm gonna finish the job. So she does. And then that girl kind of like, she becomes, I guess, something she has a vendetta against you, kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, again, another Kill Bill reference too, because that's like at the beginning when the bride kills Vivica Fox and the child is left.
That's right.
Left behind.
It's funny, like you nailed it, right? Like you could tie almost every chapter to some specific, like, famous story, Hollywood movie, or a historical tale or something like that. But yeah, I thought those particular earlier chapters with Throne were good. You had her second chapter, I think, where you go to a town. There isn't even a boss fight. There's just that you drink the poison or don't, or you try to get the other guy to drink the poison, right? That was interesting. I like the idea that it was a different style of chapter, where you weren't like going to a dungeon and then fighting a boss. It was kind of just pretty straightforward. You're just seeking out this guy, and then you got to play like a drinking game with him, and you had to pay attention to the clue about the cups, so you didn't drink the poisoned cup. And the first time I did, I got a game over because I mean, I'd forgotten. I wasn't 100% sure what I was like, but I also kind of wanted to see both sides if it would actually kill you or not, and it did. And so,
well,
you go back and just do it again. But
that's funny. It reminds me of, obviously not quite the same because this was a comedy, but the Princess Bride, where they have the where it's like the game of wits with the man in black, and I can't remember what his name is in the game, but he put, or in the movie, sorry, when they're sitting at the rock and he's like, oh, I'm going to poison a cup, and you have to decide which to choose or whatever. And,
that's right.
yeah, and it ends up they're both poisoned, which is hilarious.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen kind of like stories like that or narrative beats like that, and I thought the game did a pretty good job of it. And so I liked Throne. I thought the maybe conclusion was a little bit just kind of out there, a little bit weird. Didn't hit the same high notes as Oswald's or Hikari's did. But
I wasn't even expecting a boss fight at the end of the Agnia.
No, I know. Yeah, exactly.
Like, wait a minute, we're fighting? What the hell?
Yeah, maybe like a rhythm game or a Dance Dance Revolution kind of thing or something like that. But
that might have been my favorite music in the whole game, though. That boss fight.
Yeah, I hers was one of the last that I did. I know you'd made that comment because you'd finished hers earlier, and so I was kind of waiting to get there and hear that music. And it is incredibly good. Yeah,
it's like a Celtic theme.
Yeah. God, I mean, this soundtrack, I think it has a little bit more, to me, variety maybe than the first one. I don't think one is better than the other. I think they're just different. There's so much like different music in this one.
His smooth saxophone solos. Like, what the hell's going on?
Even just the different cities. The different cities all felt so unique, both musically and design wise. Like this is a game, like it reminded me of Bravely Default, right? Where all the stories were kind of pop-up books and they all felt really unique. Like every place you went to had its own kind of gimmick. These places didn't have gimmicks so much as actually feeling like real towns and cities in a real world. Like you can go to Vancouver and New York and Tokyo. These are places that look so different, and this felt like that. And I loved that kind of analogy with the real world. Like New Destra felt so much different from like Wellwood or Montwise. And the cities did have a little bit of a shtick, but yeah, they also felt just super unique. And I loved going back to all of them.
Yeah, New Delphi is probably my favorite. Probably just because I love the kind of the big city vibe to it. Obviously, being a Canadian, I also had some. I can't. What's the? I'm blanking on. It was the place that I was like, hey, this place has some incredible weapons. You gotta get it, and I can't think of it. It's where the Sacred Guard is up in the north, and now I'm blanking on the place's name.
It's not the icy one. Stormhail.
Yeah,
no.
Stormhail. Yeah. Stormvale. Yeah.
Yeah. When we got there, I like that one. I went to the shop and there were so many good items. Like, oh my gosh, they're so powerful.
Reasonably priced too, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, man, I'm like doubling all of my characters' attacks just with like these $30,000 weapons. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, that was good. That was one of the places where when I got there, I noticed like the enemies were so much stronger, and I'm like, I spent like 10 or 15 minutes just outside grinding my characters up. So I'm like, I can't pass up all this experience I'm getting here. Yeah. But so when I got to Stormvale or Stormhail, whatever it is, I really felt like that was I guess a turning point in the game where, okay, like I've clearly gone to like, the next level. So I might as well take advantage of the tougher enemies and just boost my characters up a bit for the last section of the game, I guess.
Yeah. I guess we should get into a bit about the combat. We talked about how great the mechanics are. I think we talked a bit about the mechanics in the last episode, so we don't have to get too specific, but I know with all the classes that you first start off with, it was funny. I didn't initially talk to the people in the guild masters. Like when you went to get the secondary classes, just from the normal ones, I kind of just went in, got my license, and then left. And then it was you who was like, hey, did you get like the multiple licenses or the legendary arms? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And it was one of the things that really made me think like, oh, you know what? I'm really not talking enough to the characters kind of just out and about that are part of the story, because there's so much is revealed by these characters because there's just so much hidden in this game. It's incredible.
I mean, just think about like on a very small level, like every single town has like dozens of NPCs that you can interact with. Not you can just talk to them basically and see what they say, and then you can interact with them with all the path actions, right? Which are potentially like three to five more actions that you can do with them. Whether that's guiding them, interrogating them,
I was
challenging them,
robbing
mugging
everybody
them.
blind.
Like there's so many
Like,
things you can do. Like,
yeah.
and then there's just all these people in the game. Some of them you have to come back to later because you can't. There's no way you'll win a challenge or you won't be able to mug them, early on in the game. So you got to come back and try it later. Maybe they're holding on to some special items or some quest items or something like that. But yeah, everywhere you go, there's just something to do with so many different characters. And again, it just makes the world feel so huge. Just love that about it. Every time I came back to an area, it felt like there was new things to do there. So
Yeah.
you never felt like going back to a city was a waste of time because there's always something new to do, something new to see, something new to buy. Like it's great.
Just stuff around every corner. When we were talking about, you and I were discussing the hidden classes, like which ones were good and everything, and you said, "Well, asked me how many inventions I had gotten for the
Yeah.
inventor class," and I'm like, "What class is that?" And it was like probably the easiest one to
It's
find
the
in the
easiest one to
entire game.
find. That's why I'm
It was
surprised you didn't just
literally
come across
3
it.
steps outside the first town I actually started the game with, and I
Yeah.
couldn't believe it was there. I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even know this path was."
Yeah, I'm glad they kind of positioned it there because it's almost I think for most people they'll pick it up first, they'll pick it up early because if you're exploring that continent, you're just kind of walking around. It's a fairly like low level area of the game, right? Maybe level 10 enemies or 11 enemies or something like that. And so you're naturally inclined to explore more in those areas, I think. And so
Yeah.
yeah, just kind of finding that little shack across from the river, like I found it right away and I poked in there, and you get a couple of abilities to start. And then it gives you just this longer quest to be working on, right? Like, because all of the inventions, which function as your skills, they require you to pick up certain items and return those items to the inventor. I guess the person at that guild who's giving out the job.
Yeah.
And so I kind of I had this list in my head of like, okay, I need large elemental stones, the ones that you use in battle to cast like the higher level spells. So once I had one of each of those, I would go back and I got that item, and then what's the next set of items I can pick up? And I didn't end up finishing a bunch of them until later, but it was just cool to have that in mind of like, oh, I can kind of finish this class whenever I want to. If I find it particularly useful, and some of its initial abilities are pretty useful actually.
Yeah, the first hidden class that I ended up finding myself was the Arms Master.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's one. The thing is you can't really get it until near the end of the game because it's in the, I think it's Gravel, or the names of these towns are.
Well, they all have something stone. They have something stone in their name, right?
Yeah.
Orsburg, Gravel, and then there's one more, Crackridge or something like that.
Oh,
Or
maybe it's Crackridge I'm
Crackridge
thinking
might
of.
be the name of the area as opposed to the cities. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
remember, but yeah, something
But
like that.
it's like in one of the most northern parts of the map, and it's like behind level 45 area.
That's
So
right.
it's like it's not very easy to get to. So it's really a late game thing. And so when I got there, you find a shack in the middle, and the guy just gives you the Arms Master class, which to me is of the 4 hidden classes, the Arms Master to me was the most useful.
Oh yes, for sure.
Yeah, just because like when you find the legendary weapons, you get such ridiculous moves. Like when you first get the Arms Master, you get this one move where you end up hitting the character with like I think 8 different weapon types, and to me it was always useful because it's like, okay, I'm going to find out exactly what weapon weaknesses they are, because you can just use this attack without, you don't have to sacrifice any of the BP or anything. You just use it once, it hit 8's time, and you can figure out where to go from there. But then later on, like you're getting these crazy attacks for like your axe and your lance. And
the axe one is so strong. I use that all the time. I basically won the game with that one. Like I can't believe how powerful that move was. Oh my gosh! Like so yeah. I put the Arms Master on Hikari right away. I kept it on him basically the whole game. The fact that, I mean, just as a default, the fact that you can now equip a character with every single weapon means you will always be able to find the weakness of an enemy pretty fast and just keep pounding on it, right? That's the great thing about that class is it's tricky to unlock some of the moves because you have to find these special weapons that allow you to gain those new skills. But once you do, man, that the arms master is just a wrecking ball. Like I don't know how you go through some of those end game bosses without like a massive amount of grinding or trying to take advantage of a class like that. Like I kept it on him the whole game. It was super useful. I'm just dealing tens of thousands of damage with some of those special moves you find with the attached weapons, right? So the frustrating thing was that you have to have the weapons equipped to use those skills, and I kept like I would do like the optimize, and it would take them
that
off and put
screwed it.
something
Yeah.
else on, right? So I had to try to remember, okay, which axe do I need to use that axe skill because I want to have that skill on him at all
Yeah.
times,
You get to a certain point where you can't do the optimization anymore because it just messes
You
everything up.
can't, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But yeah, well, and specifically with Hikari, like, so the thing with the Arms Master too is that all of those weapons are the most powerful in the game. So Hikari having it is doubly useful because then you could do a Brand's Blade with with the ability to allow up to 100,000 hit with
Yeah, that's
one
right.
attack.
That's right.
So yeah, like you're basically relying on Hikari to be the lead man on really taking out chunks of HP with the Brand's Blade attack.
And I'm not saying like that's the best way forward, but I think for a lot of people, it's a pretty kind of basic strategy that will work out, right? Just buff Hikari. So this was kind of like how a lot of battles went up until like the final battle, and even the final boss, I just did the same thing. Like you buff Hikari, you give him like attacking or physical damage up, you reduce the physical defense of the enemy. You make sure Hikari's got max BP. So if you've got you want to have someone with a merchant class, Particio, or someone with a secondary job class merchant, and you use the donate to give BP to Hikari. So then when he's got full BP, he's buffed his attack, enemy defense is lowered, and then you just use a full BP, either Brand's Blade or one of the Arms Master special attacks. And yeah, you're doing tens of thousands of damage, and you can do that a couple of times. You're going to take out most bosses, right? So that felt to me like kind of just a basic strategy that you can kind of use almost all the time. I've found that this this secret final boss that I'm stuck on, this final quest I need to complete, was totally optional. You do not need to do it. But you have to grind up basically all your characters to be like level 80 plus, I think. I tried to fight him and I would have no chance. Like I think my highest is like 72, 75. And I still have a bunch of characters in like the 40s and low 50s. So I've got no chance to beat the secret boss as it is. But you can beat the game's final boss and then any of the kind of optional bosses other than this secret one. Just with that basic strategy with Hikari, right? Or I guess anyone else. Like I gave Throne the warrior class, and so she had Brand's Blade, and you do the same thing where you equip the passive skill where you can do more than 10,000 damage in a hit. And I'm getting her to do 20 or 30,000 too, right? So you can have multiple characters able to dish out that damage. Like there's a lot of ways to make a very capable fighting party in this game. That's one of the fantastic parts of the combat system.
Well, I also like that you don't have to actually have the class equipped for the abilities because, like you said, you can get. So one of the abilities that a warrior can obtain is that they can get the ability to make attacks that are more than 10,000. So it goes up to it basically takes the max from 10 to 100,000. And I didn't have the warrior on Throne. Like I'm not using that as the class as their secondary class. I was swapped with some others, but I wanted her to have that ability. So I just and because she was my main character, I had like 100,000 JP. So I had endless. I could just do whatever I wanted. So what I did was I had her equip the class. I bought the ability, and then I wouldn't put her back to her other class, but the abilities still stay there.
That's right.
So I was able to use that warrior ability, even though she wasn't going to be a warrior. So, but I think it was because I think your main party was like Throne, Temenos, Particio, and Hikari. And I think at the end of the day, that's probably the most powerful.
Pretty good, yeah.
Because like you have Throne, he can do the extra turn with her power up. Particio can do the extra like you can max out his BP
It's
with his
so
power up,
useful. Gaining
which is
max
yeah.
BP, I can't. Yeah, it's so strong.
Well, and then if you equip with Particio, you can equip an attack where when you break a character, you max out your power gauge. So then you can
Yeah,
just keep
do it again.
refilling your BP like like every other turn
Yeah,
to
that's
a certain
crazy.
extent. So
There's so many ridiculous accessories you can pick up too later on. Like they just either give you a buff at the beginning of the fight, or they increase your health like a ton. There's one that like it increases your damage if you're lower health. So you want to like I was watching some YouTube videos about how to beat this secret boss, and that's one of the things they were doing. They would put on this I guess this relic or this accessory that increases your damage at low health. They would get one of their characters down to like 1 health, I guess, like as if they were just revived or something like that. And then that's how they'd be doing 99,000 damage is by buffing that character in particular. So
uh,
I just love like there's just a lot of fun late game accessories you can pick up from exploring the world. I love that you get on the ship and you can kind of like just pick up treasure chests just floating in the water.
yeah.
It's just such a funny thing, right? Like
Well,
normally it'd be hidden somewhere else, but
there's that slime monster that was there's a monster that kind of a watery, I don't know what it is, monster
yeah,
that
yeah.
you is like a massive boss that you have to defeat before you can get to where the secret like after post game boss is.
Hmm.
And I was surprised at how difficult that boss was.
Yeah, it was really tough. That's the
It's a
whirlpool one, I think,
damage
right?
sponge. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like a damage sponge. I just kept killing it, and it never. And that's the other thing is you never know, like unless you use analyze from the scholar, you never really know how much HP that the enemy has
That's right.
left,
That's
except
right.
for the fact that their name changes color as you bring them down.
I didn't
And
even notice that. That's new
you
to
didn't know
me.
that?
No, I
You
did
didn't know
not know
that?
that. No,
No.
no, no.
Okay, so yeah, when you go to attack someone, their name is usually white.
Yeah.
But when you've got them beaten down, it goes yellow, and then it will go red, and then they'll be defeated.
That I may have noticed the red part, but I don't know if I noticed any other changes. I maybe yeah, gosh, I don't know. Again, the game like I was kind of like on autopilot for some of these battles, right? Where I'm just
Yeah.
like setting up my system. I don't care how much now. I know what I need to do here. I set up Akari for like the home run shot. What's funny about that kind of monster slime creature that you're talking about? I was actually grinding off of that one for this secret boss. So
Oh, really?
I'm literally what happens is once you beat that boss, you can keep finding it as a random encounter. It's as
Yeah.
a rare
Yeah.
random encounter. So
I ran into it again, and I'm
you can
like, no
find it
thanks.
again. Yeah, I'm like, oh, I think he's got like 120,000 HP or
Yeah.
something like that. So yeah.
Yeah.
That was a tough one. There's a giant shark you fight as well. That's another one in the ocean. After you find him, you can encounter it later. I guess during the daytime, you would find that one.
Yeah,
So you
where
can fight that one
was
again too.
that? I think I fought it once. That wasn't. Was the shark at the shipwreck?
I think it can be in different places. So I found it
Okay.
in one of like the entrance to one of the caves. There's a little like inlet, and it was you see its shark fin floating through the water, but I think it can be anywhere on the map actually. So you seek
Oh,
out the
okay.
shark fin as soon as you go into it. That's the battle there. So
Now I might have to. That's the other thing is I don't feel like I did a whole lot of exploring on the seas. Like
yeah,
initially, I spent 100,000 money so quickly at the beginning of the game because I'm like, I want the ship.
yeah,
And then I realized how strong the enemies were in the water, and I'm like, no thanks, I'll
yeah.
come back
You got
later.
scared off of exploring the oceans because you had the ship too soon. Where by the
Yeah,
time I got it, I'm like, oh, this is. I mean, they were level 34, I think, in general on the ocean, and
yeah,
then
it wasn't.
obviously
It's
bosses
not
are
bad
different, but
now, but
yeah,
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 I was definitely scared then.
it's good.
Yeah, I guess there's still two other hidden classes. We got the Arcanist, or Arcanist, I guess, however it's pronounced, and that one I ended up finding at the end. Like, I guess you have to finish Hikari's chapter 5 to even have access to it because it's in the city of Ku. There's
That's
like
right,
this
exactly.
Tower of Trials where there's this kid who's like, are you sure you want to come in here because you're gonna get beat down and killed? And I'm like, no, I'll be okay. And then I was like, after I think the first fight I don't think was too bad. It was the second fight where she kept throwing. There was like the snake charmer who kept dropping snakes, and then you couldn't actually hurt her until you defeated the snakes. And I'm like, stop throwing snakes!
Yeah,
Like,
of course.
but that was a pretty fun one. And the Arcanist, the The abilities are all right. I don't know. Maybe because I got it so late, I haven't really been able to kind of decipher its best use. But it allows your characters to fight with like an element, like whatever physical they're doing. So if you wanted, a character to use their sword, but then you also wanted to hit him with like a fire weakness to lower shields, that it gives the attackers all the ability to do like a fire damage
No,
after
that's
their.
Conjurer. That's Conjurer.
Oh, Conjurer. Sorry, you're right.
Arcanist is the one where it does light or dark to restore your HP or your SP. So it might do like a
Yeah,
light attack, and whatever the damage does, it restores your party's health, or a dark attack to restore your SP, something like that. I think
yeah,
it's just another kind of support type class. I don't think it's meant to be like a super damage dealing one.
yeah. So the Arcanist is the one I haven't got yet. I actually should
Yeah,
go get
yeah.
that
So
because
Conjure is
yeah,
the
Conjurer is
one
the
that
one
you,
I got it. The
yeah,
Conjurer is the one in the trials. Yeah,
that's
the
right.
Arcanist I think is. Well, you know why? Is I'm pretty sure the Arcanist one is the one in the sea, right?
Yeah,
Where
that's the one in that hidden that island that looks like a maze.
yes, yeah. So
That's the one you're gonna get. Yeah.
yeah. So I'll have to do that. Yeah. Is there any other standards for you?
Oh god, I mean everything. Like, I mean, it's funny. Like, I wouldn't think this game is a 10. I don't. I think it's a fantastic RPG, and I think it's the type of RPG I really like to play. But I kind of I do have some kind of mixed feelings as I kind of look back on the entire game. And I do think that like ultimately my desire is for a game like Final Fantasy VI that has a very wide cast, that they all have their individual personalities and stories, kind of like this game, but also has like this larger narrative that you're going through kind of piece by piece, and you are building your party out like that. Like, I think that is still like a game I prefer to something like this. However, like, this is Octopath Traveler 2 feels like the pinnacle of like short storytelling in video games, like in this type of RPG. Like, I know we see kind of narrative style games that do a really good job of that, but to do it in an RPG, it's such a unique thing, and we don't see that outside of like the first game, and Live Alive does it too, obviously. I think Octopath Traveler 2 has done it such a better job of it. But yeah, I mean, that's why I'm very curious to see if this will be the end of the series or not. I don't know that there's a larger appetite for this short story format. I think that people still kind of want, like, again, like a Chrono Trigger, like a Final Fantasy VI, even a Bravely Default. Like, those games, they have this larger story, and turn based, classic gameplay for sure. And I think Octopath Traveler 2 and 1 have just knocked it out of the park gameplay wise. But narrative wise, I think there's still a lot of people that are still kind of hung up on this structure. And it's not, I don't think it's just about like, oh, that stories aren't connected, or how are they connected or not. Like, because I think we've seen the improvement in this game to see that they are more connected. But if you try to do any more, you're going to lose what this game is, right? Like, if you try to connect the characters even more than this, it won't be Octopath Traveler anymore. It'll be something else. And that they'll just I think you have to kind of choose one format or another at this point. Do you want to do the short story style like this, or do you want like a novel length type of game, or like a play or something like that, with like a Final Fantasy VI? So I'm not sure. I don't know what the future holds. I know this is a fantastic game. I really hope people aren't sleeping on it because they didn't love the first one, or they heard mixed things about the first one, because it does improve upon it in probably every way. David, I'm very eager, actually, and I was thinking about this today before we started recording, like, you going back to the first game now, and maybe not seeing like how it's worse in the second one, but noticing more of the things that it does that this one also does, and just kind of appreciating those more. I think you're going to like the first one better after having played this one. I really do believe that. I don't think you're going to put it above this one, of course,
Yeah.
but I think you're going to appreciate the first one more.
I'm sure just the fact that the appreciation of the combat system should probably kind of get me through regardless. I'm thinking that because it's going to be one of those, like, I didn't really play a ton of the first game. Like, I got through all the first chapters or whatever, and then I was kind of like, yeah, I'm good. But going back and going further, it'll be the combat system enough will be to be able to get me in. But it'll be interesting to see, yeah, like how it always happens to me. Like, there's other games where it's like, okay, I didn't like this game, and then I played something similar, and that was really good, and then I went back to the other game, and I'm like, oh, I kind of appreciate this more now. Like, I understand it. It's like sometimes it takes doing one other game or one other experience to really fully understand what they were trying to do in an earlier
Mhm.
iteration of it. So yeah, it's definitely something I'm going to go back to at some point.
I think
Uh,
something I was hoping from this game is I was hoping that the chapter structure would be a little bit different, and you get that taste of it with Throne, where not every chapter had to end with a dungeon and a boss battle. But then I think for the most part, this game does kind of fall back into that habit or that
yeah,
pattern of every chapter is kind of the same. You'll find an opportunity to use your path action. Then you'll do a dungeon, and then you'll fight a boss. And I think the game, when it deviates from that structure a little bit, it's even stronger. And I think that I really liked so that's one thing. And then the other thing, I really did like the pairing off of the characters into their own kind of separate side stories, where the side stories had two parts to them. And I think that was just enough to give you like, show how their relationship kind of makes sense. Like, or like maybe they seem like an odd couple at first, but then, when they get together, like it sparks kind of fly, or it's an interesting pairing at the least. Like
yeah,
Throne and Temenos had one. Hikari and Agnea had one. Oswald and Particio. I thought that was a really good one actually. That
yeah,
might have been my favorite one.
yeah.
And then Oshette and Casti. I think I did. I thought this was going to be the case at first, and Oshette and Casti are probably the two characters I just gravitated towards the least. I think that's mostly because of their class, not necessarily because of their story entirely. Although I ended up liking Casti's story quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think her relationship with Malaya, and just her kind of like there's that, I think it's her third chapter, where she goes to that ice town, and there's the woman who's dying there, and you're trying to keep her alive so that her daughter can reach a suitable age to become like the mayor of the town, basically something like to that
Yeah.
effect.
Yeah,
And
well, she had to be a certain age to be able to inherit
that's
the
right. That's right.
estate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that chapter was just so heartwarming and gut wrenching both. Like
Yeah.
that had the most emotional resonance, I think. And I don't remember any moment in the first game being so poignant as this chapter was. So Cassie's story really kind of captivated me there for sure. I didn't
Well,
like
that
fully
chapter had
understand.
one of the most beautiful scenes, like visually too,
Yeah,
when
yeah,
Malaya put Casti into the boat and pushed her, and then
yeah,
went and laid down beside the horse, and there was like kind of the pink and purple sky, and
yeah.
like
That's right.
and the sun starting to come up as Casti was floating away,
Hmm.
like and the single tree, like
Yeah,
it,
I know. I can picture it in my mind. It's
yeah,
fantastic. Yeah, and I think they might go back to that scene later, and she kind of like disappears into like a puff of like ether or
yeah,
something like that. And I'm just like,
yeah,
wow, like they did such a good job with
yeah,
what could have been a story like, oh, the apothecary. Who cares about an apothecary, right? Like you're
yeah.
just an herbalist. You're just dispensing potions and stuff. But yeah, they did some good work there, and it really made me care about a character I didn't think I was going to. Um, I thought I thought I wasn't gonna like Oshette's story, and I didn't really end up liking it that much. Even the final battle with her seemed kind of just okay. Like, I guess that twist that happens, and obviously, we've been doing spoilers the whole time, but this was a really interesting one. The final boss of Oshette's final chapter is the animal you don't choose as your spirit animal, right? Like,
Yeah.
so if you chose Mahina, the owl, then you fight the fox character. And I'd love to hear from someone who picked the fox and had to fight Mahina, because I want to see what Shadow
Oh,
Mahina looks like.
I picked the fox.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I
Yeah,
want to tell me
it
about this
was.
owl.
Oh, so the owl is like a big like it's huge. Like it doesn't even look like an owl almost. It almost looks
Hmm.
like it's turned into a raven.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so cuz it's much
That makes sense.
bigger,
That makes sense.
bigger wings. Like it's obviously like your boss, it's the whole screen or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's I'm sure it's the same with the fox, where it's like it's glowing from the shadow because it's been taken over or whatever, but it's also been like tortured over the years, so
That's right. Yeah,
there's
same
cuts
same idea.
everywhere.
Same idea. Yeah.
And it's got like they make it look very menacing too, because it's got like the big razor beak and stuff, like it's just but you can, and one of the things they get across, and clearly they wanted to, is kind of like the despair that kind of seeps from the design, like
Hmm.
because clearly like the animal was heartbroken it wasn't chosen,
Yeah.
and then is being beaten its whole life or whatever, and imbued with like this darkness, and you can just feel it from the fight, from the
Hmm.
design, and I'm sure it happens in with the fox too. Is like you beat it down in the boss fight itself, and then becomes another twisted version of itself.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, becomes even more warped through that battle. Yeah, that was a fun twist for sure.
I was more surprised because initially I'm thinking like the hunter class is going to be the most useless class, but it was way more powerful than I was giving it credit for. Like, I think we had like on Twitter, Nadia had jokingly said like, what if it's Gao, but not useless.
Yeah, yes, exactly. That's a well put. I mean, her. I mean, yeah. Once you get some of the strong enemies and you're provoking them, bringing them into the battles, that's great. But her ultimate abilities,
The Guardians,
yeah, they were. Oh
yeah,
exactly.
Glacius and Terra, like they just rip enemies to
They're
bits.
very very strong. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She can put out a lot of damage to one or multiple enemies. So. Yeah, I think in the mid game I used of Shet a lot more, and then late game I was just so attracted to this party with Hikari and Throne. Like Throne's HP thief, the double dagger slash, man, that does a lot of damage somehow.
Yeah.
And I think it's because her speed determines her attack damage. I think, right?
Yeah.
So you make her really fast. There's a lot of accessories and armor that boost your speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you get her speed up really high. Even the passive abilities, you can raise it that way too. And yeah, she can just put out a ton of damage even without buffs to her character.
Yeah. I feel like everybody's got something useful. Like the Temenos being able to like overclock your HP is incredibly useful.
Awesome. Yeah, such a useful ability. I love to see stuff like that from like the white mage class. His hilarious EX special where you just use all of your SP. And it looks like Luminaire, right, from Chrono Trigger when he uses that ability. That I don't know what it's called, but he basically uses all of his SP to deal like this orb of light that just expands outward like a nuclear bomb or something. It looks so much like Luminaire. I'm like, yeah, come on, that's really good. But yeah,
no, but like you said, I'm hoping there's a bunch of things. Like the content is so brimmed to the max that I feel like if they wanted to scale it down, like maybe they could do games like this and not take 5 years to develop it. Like, as much as the path abilities were fun to use, like I love knocking people out and stealing all their stuff. Like they didn't necessarily need to be in the game. Like I feel like if you took that out, you wouldn't lose too much. Also, like there was probably. I didn't do nearly very many of the actual like side quests, like of the NPCs where you just kind of walk and they're like, "Oh, I need this thing," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm busy. I'll get to it."
There are so many. I think there's
too many.
Got to be maybe 30 or 40 or something at least.
Like per region.
Some of them are I think there's
it's
8
ridiculous.
to 10 per region. It's a lot because I did all of them except this one, which is tied to the secret boss. Some of them are really really good actually, and at the end of the game all the kind of side characters seem to get one, like like the not Malaya but the Malaya type characters that kind of pop up in the story, they all get one and they're all really good. It's like a continuation of their story. Like you remember that girl from the desert town who Agnea teaches to dance, she gets one, right? Like they all of those characters get one to continue their story, which is really good. So I do recommend at the very least doing those ones, which are a little bit more involved. They're not like kind of the take someone go quests. Here. They're not fetch questy, and really not too. I'd say less than half of these quests are fetch questy. More of them are like a lot of them are like do a path action or solve a riddle of some kind.
Figuring out what it is exactly they need or want. Like
usually or just beat up my husband because he's going to he's going to the gambling den. But that one's actually it's more than that. You can't just beat him up. If you beat him up, you get like a fake ending to that quest. You actually have to go to the gambling den, talk to the dealer, and get some information about how the gambling is rigged. And bring that back to the guy to convince him to stop gambling. I thought it was a hilarious fake out of like, oh, I thought there was a glitch. I thought like, have I actually solved this quest? Because it says finished, but it's not actually finished. I didn't get credit for it, so I had to figure out what was going on there. But the side quests are really. There's a 3-parter in one of the late game towns where you're like there's someone on trial and you have to collect this evidence and like go to all these different places. And it actually ends up being like a 3-part side quest where you get like 3 quests kind of in succession. So that was really cool. There's the side quests are definitely worth doing for the most part, especially the late game ones. So I would recommend someone if you're wherever you are in the game, if maybe you finish it, you want to go back. I would do some of those late game ones. I think the story payoffs there are worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up to an hour here. Is there anything that we've missed that you want to make sure that we get in before?
I mean, I think I've said all I want to say about the game. That I love it. That it's going to be one of my favorite games this year. It and the first game are always going to be fun. I'm always going to have a fondness for those. I don't think it knocks any games out of my like top 5 or something like that. I think that I really like this, but at the end of the day, I just see a limitation to its storytelling that I can't get over. I think it does so much well, and I'm not saying like overlook those things or whatever. Like I enjoy it for those things it does well, but at the end of the day, like I think I'm more fulfilled and I find it more memorable when you've got like a single story that takes 30 to 60 hours to unravel. Like I think I kept in my mind comparing it to something like Mass Effect 2 as well, where Mass Effect 2 it tells a singular story, but it's also told across 3 games, and it's not about the side quests are their short stories to it, but it has this main overarching narrative that's so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Dragon
and all the
Age
characters have their own storyline
exactly
that relates to the overall narrative too. Right?
That's right, and then that's how you bond with them, right? But it's still that main narrative that draws me in. Final Fantasy VI, it's that main narrative. Final Fantasy IV, same thing. Why I love those games. FF7, FF7 Remake, like these games have like a larger story they're telling, and that's what I love about them. And they I'm not saying that they're better or worse than Octopath Traveler 2, but I think that they do something that this game does not. And to me, it still does feel missing to an extent. I'm not saying there aren't connections in this game. There are definitely, and they're more pronounced in the first game. But I think ultimately I do still have a craving for that longer narrative that doesn't happen here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to what they have coming up from Team Asano. Like, with Triangle Strategy was one of my favorite games of last year.
So good.
And now this year, Octopath Traveler 2 has been a blast. It's in my game of the year. It's my game of the year so far, obviously. The only reason I say it might not be by the end is because Final Fantasy 16 is coming out, and everything I see about that just makes it look more and more incredible. But they just I don't know, it hit everything well for me. It felt like one of the other things I joked about is it felt like a turn-based version of Skyrim with just it's like, go wherever you want, but there's obviously going to be places where you're going to get destroyed
for sure,
and you'll have to come back later, and
it does a good job of telling you where you shouldn't be. The game warns you like if you're not in a level or not in a place where you should be. And I do like it is. I think the game's pretty approachable like that. I'm sure. I think we are in the same boat here. If you play it straight, you don't really need to grind. No, you want to swap out your characters maybe a little bit more than just doing their quests with them. Like, do try to have that balance to bring everybody up, but you don't really need to be grinding. And there are ways to make any grinding you do very fast. I don't think you're spending a lot of extra time in places than you would need to.
No, like worst case, and I even did this because I think I had 1 or 2 characters that I didn't use as much as the rest, and so I just went to a couple like level 45 areas, and it kind of just wrecked them with my 2 or 3 strong characters, and then they went up super quick. Like it might have been like 10 minutes.
Like you gain levels really fast in this game, actually. So grinding isn't really required until you get to the very, very, very end. So
the only thing I'll end with is I hope that the 2D HD lives on, and I hope, like you said, Dragon Quest 3 I have high hopes for, so I hope it does really well and really motivates Square to stay with this kind of run of games. Like everything looks beautiful, it plays beautiful. It's right up my alley, so I hope they keep making them. Team Asano is batting 100 right now, so
I mean, the fact that
1,000 or whatever you want.
The fact that they're releasing Live Alive on other platforms, they're doing the pixel remasters are coming soon. Like Square Enix clearly has a mind towards like old school games, and that the fans of classic RPGs, right? Classic turn-based RPGs. Like they want to keep that audience happy. I think you keep them in the ecosystem for sure. So yeah, I think we both wholeheartedly recommend this game. People that have played it, I think that's probably still more for you to discover, and I think a lot of the extra and side content of this game is worthwhile. If you're on PlayStation, I think the going for the plot is aside from like the very 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 end game stuff, like I think it's very very attainable. And yeah, there's a lot of ways to just enjoy yourself in this world. So definitely recommend it to everybody, and hopefully our listeners out there who have played it and finished it are feeling like we did. If not, of course, we want to hear from you. Send us an email, leave us a review on whatever podcast app you're using. Let us know what you thought about the game. What games are you looking forward to next coming up after this? What are you playing after this? David, I know you're playing some of the smaller games coming out. I'm probably going to be doing the same. A lot of review games coming up before stuff like Zelda and Diablo and Final Fantasy 16 in the next couple of months. But yeah. I think that'll do us for this episode. So thanks everybody for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed our spoiler cast of Octopath Traveler 2. I imagine like this format of kind of doing impressions and then spoiler casts is something we want to keep doing. It's fun to share some initial thoughts, and then for games that we're all in on, like why not just kind of break it down like this? It's always a good time. So yeah, thanks again everybody. We will talk to you again next week on The Thirsty Mage. Bye for now.
Bye.